I'm Barb for Blaine. You see my signs all over the place. I'm running for city council for Blaine, and this is my first time running for any kind of political office. And what really spoke to me with her ending comments is we have to just, we can't keep waiting. We have to stand up. I'm a grandmother of 14. I'm 71, and I could easily just stay retired, play golf, and go see my grandkids. But I decided I can't stand this anymore. You know, we're losing our country so rapidly that I decided about a year ago to get involved. And I've learned a lot running a campaign. It's not an easy job. It's a challenge all the time. Not even sure what I'm looking at when I get into city council, because there's a bunch of things that I haven't stayed familiar with or become familiar with. So I think there's going to be a learning curve. But I'm willing to do the hard work. I'm very motivated. I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about politics. General Mike Flynn has said, get involved locally and you can impact nationally. So that's what I'm doing. The only reason I'm making it shorter than I thought, I had notes, is Jim covered a lot of what I was going to talk about. After I was a history major, I decided to go to nursing school because you can't really do much being a history major except teach. And I went and got my nursing degree. I practiced clinical nursing for 25 years in various areas, ICU, pediatrics, whatever. And then I got a job with a biotech company, Amgen. And what I did for Amgen is exactly what's going on right now. I was, because of the nursing background, I was in the department that collected the adverse events of our people that were on our clinical trials. So in other words, you participate, you're signed up in a clinical trial. These were oncology clinical trials. So these were patients that needed the drugs that we were developing. They weren't, in lieu of getting a possible vaccine or a flu or a virus, these were sick people. So they participated in the clinical trials. So the doctors that were treating them and giving our experimental medications, or the patients would call in and report what kind of side effects they had. These were documented, followed up. We wrote a report on every single one of them. The reports were submitted to the FDA. The FDA monitored it and checked in annually. We had to go through audits. We had to go through all sorts of regulatory hurdles. We never had one person that was put on a clinical trial without an informed consent. This is the biggest gap. This is what the first thing I noticed is no one, even before this, was, quote, approved by the FDA, which it really, that's debatable whether it was a formal approval. But nobody signed an informed consent. So we're already back where the Nuremberg codes, I'm sure you've heard that referred to, that's why they were developed, that these people that were experimented on in concentration camps during the Second World War, this would never happen again in civilized society. And here we are. You know, we're treating people with an experimental drug. We don't know the long-term side effects. And it horrifies me, because I have grandchildren, to think that somebody would give an experimental product to a child with no information. Like Jim said, most of the clinical trials, you have a phase 1 where you give it to humans in a small group. Then you go to phase 2, and what you're measuring there is safety. Then you go to phase 2, you're giving it to the patient population and a bigger group, and you're measuring safety and some efficacy. And then after all that, and you go through those hurdles, the FDA follows you all the way around, approving your next steps. You go to phase 3, which is, depending on the patient population, a much larger group of patients. And usually those are 18 months to 3 years, and that's in a cancer population. That's not in a vaccine population. I'm sorry?
Why are they stopping when people are being harmed by this shot?
That's a good question, because when the swine flu, and I can't remember, the 80s, I guess that was, under General Ford, or President Ford, he stopped the clinical trials. I believe the number was 5 deaths of people that got the swine flu vaccine, and they stopped the clinical trials. Do you know how many deaths have happened with this vaccine? Over 12,000. But you're not hearing about it. The CDC has that data, but you don't hear about it. It's not released to the public. So there's something seriously debatable about this, concerning, but again, everybody's complying. You know, the majority of people are complying, and it's hard. Good question. I don't know.
Before they were even going to lose their jobs, my friends were friend. A year and a half ago, a 15-year-old boy got shot in Hawaii. His parents are smart people, rent cars. I don't understand.
It's based on fear, and the control is they're able to instill fear in the population. I think that's the answer to why. It makes no sense to me. So, and then what you're really seeing now is the people that have taken the vaccine are actually really still on a clinical trial. But when you have formal clinical trials, you have a control group like Jim was saying, the placebo group, or you have a different doses or whatever your control groups are. But you formally collect the data, the side effects. And so you look at the risk-benefit ratio of administering the drug. And in this case, when they decided to go ahead and approve this, they gave, like Jim said, all the people that were placebos then started getting the vaccine. So you've lost your control group. And now the numbers are so huge, but it's not a formal clinical trial. So unless somebody calls in to the CDC or the FDA or whoever they call to with an adverse event, it's not being recorded. So the data is so much worse than what we're really knowing about. No, I think they have to take it. If you call it into the VAERS, the CDC and the VAERS database, we don't know what they do with it, but they're...
I don't know what's true or not true.
Nobody knows what's true or not true, yeah.
And I really don't know any.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of different sources to follow. Personally, I follow a guy named Steve Dace on the Blaze. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him. He wrote The Fauci and Bargain, went #1 on all the bestseller lists immediately. And I would buy that book. It talks about this deception and sort of a lot of data in that for you to educate yourselves in making your decisions. So a lot of people have gotten the vaccine. I understand that. It's everybody's choice, but it's really not becoming everybody's freedom of choice anymore, is it? And now the boosters are being promoted. So it's just going to keep on going. So I think this was a great message today. Again, it's hard to go to Costco without a mask. I know it's hard to go into places where somebody will come up and say something to you right away. You know, but we've just got baby steps, I guess. But most states are not like this state. I have a daughter in Texas, and it's a completely different world. So, all right. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a silly thing, and I know I'm going to have to start somewhere. And I feel like the first thing is not wearing the mask, because I feel like it's not like it's working anyway. And like you said, going to Costco. I had a situation where I went to my vet, and I break, and I saw that sign on the door, and so I'm walking in, and I'm doing it anyway, and then you have people approach you, and you're being asked to leave. So what would be a good combat effect for that? What would be a way to just say, you know what, I'm really not loving it, and I think because I had COVID.
Yeah.
I explained, I had just COVID, I'm already full with my
Yeah, you know, I don't know the answers to that. When I go to Costco, lots of times I wear my mask under my chin, just because I want to sort of like, you know, like I'm not totally uncompliant, you know, because I'm a little bit chicken about that. But yeah, I don't know what the answers are, but you know, and it's even like you've got to take care of yourself. You've got to stand, you know, and go to the places that aren't going to bug you about it. I mean, that's again, it's business. I also one comment. Pardon? What? Okay.
I can tell you that.
5 words.
I did. I said, you know, I had COVID and I had
Yeah.
we have that.
I just